Very wonderful to have us all back together, some of us in the room, some of us live streaming. We always, of course, welcome the live streaming audience, whether I remember to say so or not. You're looking through that third eye at me, and across thousands of miles of ocean where we are here on the big island, and soaking in the Dharma teachings. Hopefully transmission works more than just in person, but it can also work through these mediums we're using or having to use nowadays. Of course, when I was with my teacher, I always felt like when I was actually with him physically that I was getting a more intense transmission than when I would see a film on him or a video back then. So there is that, but I think a lot of it may have to do with the level of concentration people can bring to it. And if they're really intensely interested, for instance, which I was, of course, hung on every word my teacher said, then it makes a big difference, even through these mediums that we have to speak through glass and wires. I mean, if music can get created, beautiful music, holy music, sacred music, hopefully, can get created through consoles with wires and silver solder and various things back in the old analog days, and now through digital consoles and machines, and it has an effect on the person listening to it secondhand, then it must be a good standby medium for us to use. And whatever the case, it's very necessary that we do this. Like I was saying, our new srvwisdom.org website is loaded already. A lot of the young people have been posting things, some of them new, some of them from our old website. Very wonderful to get on that and just soak it in, these posts, and open these links and become members and have that all there available for you. We're calling it like the Dharma at 90 cents a day kind of thing. Why not? Why wouldn't somebody want to do that? So hopefully all the wonderful teachings of the Dharma, as many as we can gather together in a hopper today, a hopper being our individual minds, and use them to remember the ancestors in the collective mind, and use that then to remember God's mind. We're calling Mahat God's mind nowadays. Somebody from India just wrote me yesterday about that. I don't understand the Mahat, so I thought it interesting to bring that back. And the person actually said, is that God's mind? So yes, God, as long as you're not talking about the formless God that we just read the Riot Act on, has a mind. That's Ishvara's mind, or the cosmic mind, as you will. Or we can call it the Word, I think is apropos, and Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic egg, is a very ancient Sanskrit word that had to do with God's mind. And of course the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and the Mahat. The Mahat, I think, covers more ground because it can open up into the collective more easily than, say, the Word can, or Hiranyagarbha. So it's an all-inclusive thing, and we're bringing it forward in this Triputi. That means a triple teaching that brings a lot of very important elements together that have become disconnected and forgotten. Like our waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state would be the way Advaita Vedanta would present this to you, very simply, probably as simple as it can be put, and therefore very effective for some people. Your state of consciousness has three levels: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And the way people think today about it is that dreams are just figments of your imagination, even to the people who are psychologists and so forth. But to the beings like the Sufis and out of Islamic influenced religion, and the yogis talking about dreams and how powerful they are, and Vedanta talking about svapna and sushupti, these great words you have for it, then you see that they're thinking about the mind as the kingdoms of heaven within. This is my contribution. I don't know if anyone has put it that way. I don't remember hearing anyone put it that way that I picked up off of. So I just didn't finish that thought at the last in the first half, is that one of the things I kind of got tired of was people just dissing dreams as if they didn't mean anything. And I certainly don't want to convince you that they mean something either, because usually they don't. The Vedantists, Buddhists and so forth, they don't have a lot to do with dreams, because dreams are, to most people, are fantasies. They're ridden with fear and doubt and fantasy and pleasure-loving and nightmarish things. That's not the kind of dream we're talking about when we talk about waking, dreaming, and deep sleep as consciousness occupying 3 levels of vibration. The middle one being thought. So the kingdom of heaven is actually thought. It's God's thought, and it's then the thought of the gods and goddesses and the ancestors, and it's the thought of the individual once they get here. That's why most beings are seeking this. That's all they can go, is from themselves to the ancestors. But they're not thinking of it as a dream. We mentioned Ramana Maharshi in the first half, how he said, yes, this is dream number 1, and when you go to sleep tonight, it's dream number 2, you see. Or maybe he put it, I'm not quite sure, that dreaming tonight was dream number 1, and waking, when you come back to waking state, that's dream number 2. It hardly matters, but the case is that you really have to wake up from the waking state. That would be enlightenment. You'd feel and see and hear and taste everything differently if you want to use it as a teaching in accord with the 5 senses. And then the 5 senses in dream tonight would give you a whole different look, feel, taste, and touch of tanmatras and things in which play and have their play in your dreams. And people got interested recently in lucid dreaming last decade. They would write me and say, how do I make my dreams lucid? And I would say, just straight off, it wasn't hard to answer, make your waking state lucid. If you can make your waking state lucid and free yourself from bondages there, and passions and attachments and brooding and all fear, your dreams will just radiate light for you. You won't have any more problems with nightmares or silly dreams. What does Vedanta call those kind of dreams? The 1,000 imbecilities of the mind. That's I think a quote from Swami Nikhilananda, our founder, Lexicons guru in New York. But or he got it in English from some of the Swamis of the Ramakrishna order. The 1,000 imbecilities of the mind is how they talk about dreams as figments of your imagination, and that's what the psychologists get a hold of, and they want to tell you about that, you see, and say, oh, don't worry about that sort of thing. But when a seer or a rishi or a guru gets a hold of those dreams, not talking about fantasies at all, talking about mental projections that connect you back into your consciousness, and we'll teach it from that way. We'll interpret it, not just use it as if it were something unsubstantial, like it doesn't make any difference. I'd say dreams that are unsubstantial like that are really not necessary to think about. The further you get, the quicker you get beyond them, the better for you. Why? It's sort of like mundane life here on earth. The sooner you can cast that away, that's just a bunch of dreams you're having daily. And you fall into a habit of it. So the same thing that happens in dreaming state, where you surround yourself, the soul surrounds itself with all these possibilities that will, some of them never come true, probably most of them. And some of them, may be negative and some may be positive. It's heaven and hell in your dreams, just like heaven and hell is here on earth. So getting started on back into the idea of the teaching, really, the tattva of Mahat, let's look at the how this moon or bubble, of the what we were just calling the mental state or the dream state or the bhuvar loka, then transitions into higher lokas, like Svarloka and Devaloka. You can see on the upper left-hand side, on the sentinel, one of the two sentinels there, like duality. You have duality existing through all these worlds until the doorway, till non-duality comes to you. So at the Svarloka, Devaloka level, you're talking about the god of gods, Indra, who is not invested with as much conscious light as the Trinity is. That's why that's a higher heaven level. Indra and all the gods and goddesses. He's the Lord of all the powers, intermediate lower powers. In your mind, it's all in the mind, that eventually helps you manifest things here on earth. Those are your powers. When you awaken to Brahmapada, to the 4 feet of Brahman, then you'll realize all the gods and goddesses are in you. And Holy Mother, I think I said that last week, Holy Mother said the same thing. All the gods and goddesses are really within you, those powers. And in the end, they all dissolve into the goddess. My mother, she called that. So, Bur Bhuva Svaha, or Svar Loka, this is the peace, peace, peace. Is why we don't need to bring peace beyond that doorway. It's already there. We need to be ambassadors of peace, if you want to put it that way, in a cosmological, philosophical, and spiritual sense to people here. Standing up for true peace, with a capital P, if you will, and not involving yourself with, shall we go back, which religion is God on the side of, which war and peace kind of idea. That's a duality that's here. When you get beyond dualities, then you know that there is no war and peace that's real. And if you think there is, then you've fallen into the karma of duality, and you suffer birth times and deaths in the wheel of samsara. We'll get to that as we move down the spectrum. So this is a general running commentary, and I put many of the quotes that go along with it. We had just quoted that Sri Ramakrishna calls the mind the doorway to heaven or the gateway to hell. So you can see how it's up to the individual soul, how it's going to interact with the ancestors and the celestials and the gods and goddesses. Is it going to use this for seeking heaven and thinking that that's the truth, that's the final step? Upanishads say no. The heaven-aspiring senses need to be transcended and drawn back inside so that you get beyond the desire for heaven, because that's where pleasures increase and pain goes away. So in a sense, heaven's a more dangerous realm to occupy than earth, because you have, with the suffering here on earth, you have more of a chance of waking up. So than in heaven, where you'll just want to enjoy more of the same until your good merit runs out and you find yourself back in the body again with the mantra, why me? Not knowing why or where or when any of this happened to you, which is the predicament of most people. So you can see how that connects very well with the teaching that you cannot work out your karma in heaven, right? You can only work it out here where you created it. So people come back here for that, lose memory of deciding to come back for that, and then create more of it. Piling more gloom on gloom is how Vivekananda described that. So a person who comes back here and takes some of its karma and works it out here is a rare soul. That's called a spiritual aspirant or a devotee. Maybe a devotee is a higher thing, doesn't have to work out karma, can actually live a dharmic life and be done, fulfill him, herself. Whatever the case may be, the risks, I'm trying to describe the risks in accord with that quote. It can be the doorway to heaven or the gateway to hell. Very nice way of putting it. I put above that quote the other 4 realms that are available to people. If you're talking about Vedanta, that's Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapoloka if you want. And Then the Satyaloka is sometimes called Brahmaloka. And you'll see there that that's the realm of the sages, saints, and rishis, the realm of the mind-born souls, the realm of the ascetics and renunciates, very high level of soul. And then the Trinity itself is sitting there. That's why it's called Brahmaloka. It's Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, or Satyaloka. That's where you get the accent to the highest truth. Now, beings going inside as they go from individual to collective to cosmic consciousness are having their own experiences around these. And some of them later on form into countries and cultures. They have similar experiences, so they agree on those experiences, and they're going to describe heavenly life and hellish life in the same way, so they follow that tract of thinking in the collective world and create a religion of it and follow it and become groups like pods of whales. Don't get me started. And then people otherwise can transcend it, go beyond even the Satyaloka. Sri Ramakrishna said Swami Vivekananda, before he came to earth, was the key rishi in the Satyaloka. He helped people give up the final vestiges of attachment to form at a very high level, get beyond the Trinity, and go to immersion in Brahman, like nirvana and so forth. That's why Shankara, you think nirvana is a word not used in Vedanta, or it actually came from there. Shankara said, basically, or sang, Aham nirvikalpo nirakara rupo vibhutvacha sarvatra sarvendriyanam nacha sangatam naiva muktir nameyash chidananda rupaham shivoham shivoham chidananda rupaham shivoham shivoham. I have no form or fancy. The all-pervading am I. Everywhere I exist, yet I am beyond the senses. Neither salvation or heaven or anything that can be known. I am pure consciousness and bliss. I am Shiva. I am Shiva. Mano bhujahamkara chitani naham nacha shrotra jiyuve nacha grana netre nacha vyoma bhumir natejo navayu chidananda rupaham shivoham shivoham chidananda rupaham shivoham shivoham. I am neither mind, intelligence, ego, or chitta, its thoughts, neither ears nor tongue, nor the senses of smell or sight. Nor am I ether, earth, fire, water, or air. I am pure consciousness and bliss. I am Shiva. I am Shiva. So in the Shankara version of this Nirvana Shatkam, 6 stanzas on Nirvana, you find all of this negated. And not because it doesn't exist or because it needs to be renounced for the luminary. You've got Shankara here and you have the Avadhut, and then we had Hastamalaka all pretty much singing in this non-dual vein. It's to be renounced in lieu of Brahman being everything. So that's what a mature renunciation is. You don't renounce it and then discriminate everything away, because you can discriminate away everything by using neti-neti or shunyata, but you can never discriminate away the presence of the one who's doing the discriminating. So there is something left over after all the dissolution. There's something left over after you dissolve the mind stream at the end of every day. There's something left over when you achieve formless meditation. That might not be substance, but it is essence. Objects are devoid of substance. We know that. There's the shunyata part of it. But the punyata part of it is, it's all essence. It's all divine essence. Homogeneous essence. Blissful. Eternally blissful. Vilapya shantim parama bhajasma, the Upanisads say. See, that's to the soul who's practicing blissful dissolution, that's eternal peace and unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss you're talking about. Hard to call that by any English or Sanskrit word, like emptiness or shunyata. And neti-neti will not attain it. It'll strip everything away from it so that you might be able to see it, but then you have to merge with it. So all of this is again leading back to the birthless, deathless state, the transformationless state, aparinama, which we looked at last week. Another way of saying that, whether you want to look at it as dissolution of the mind stream, or going from waking to dreaming to deep sleep, or getting beyond the 3 worlds, or getting up to the 4th chakra, where you find these other 7 worlds. Maharloka, Janaloka, Taparloka, and Satyaloka. And all of that then leading to that gateway up there. See, that's strung across these staffs of these 2 sentinels. Is like, you have just transcended duality. Are you ready for this? You ready for the non-dual state? Lord Jesus said, neither shall they say, lo, here, or lo, there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. It is my Father's house, and it has many mansions in it, or abiding places, which are homes of rest and peace and sojourn. So he didn't say homes of suffering, homes of mental projection that you have to renounce later. So whether it's heaven, earth, or hell, so-called by people, doesn't make any difference to the soul who's enlightened to the fact that it's all mind, and he has been able to transcend the mind and its projections. He went all the way to the Trinity, and Lord Brahma was standing there. Yes, what would you like, my dear? I want beyond you. It's one of the greatest statements ever made in Vedantic scripture, Vedic scripture. See, what would you like? I want beyond you. Back on earth, he's sitting there under the sun, the Upanishad says. He looks up and he's about to pass. He wants to leave the body. He says, "O Lord, take away the sun, the golden orb in the sky, because that light's veiling your true light." That light's veiling your true light. I don't want to fall under the auspice of, sunlit beaches and homes in Hollywood and you see, eternally sunny land with no rain. So let me get beyond the creative urge, the desire for names and forms, time and space with their pleasures and objects. I was just writing that actually today to somebody who wrote in to me. Niranjan wrote in and he said, how do there's this detachment from the senses, you see, and tastes and touches and smells and so forth. How is that dynamic to be attained? So I wrote him 3 different ways, naturally. A Triputi teaching on how to deal with detachment from the senses and the sense objects. And in the end, how the yogi can just move amongst these things. Maybe the monk has to just go away. I'm in the monastery or I'm out in the forest. I don't want any of it anymore. I'm sitting under the tree and I hope Maya doesn't burn it and the whole forest around me as I do, because it all passes. But at least here, then I'm beyond the reach of the gods and goddesses, the ancestors. Even the Trinity has no power over me. All of those are powers in myself, and myself is Atman, and I am that. Anything unclear about it? Should we go back and see what gets in the way? What kind of thoughts get in the way of your oneness with divine reality, as if anything should ever do that to you, and that you're allowing it to be done to you? So Jesus, spot on here. If it's a place of sojourn and peace, then you're probably finding a soul that never dips down into the Maya, even though he's in a body on earth, even though she's having to raise a family. Just like Holy Mother, just content in all circumstances. She said, wherever the Lord puts you, just be content in all circumstances and all situations. Nothing should ruffle that contentment or do away with that peace of mind, because that is, those 2 things are 2 of the elements of higher mind. So yes, higher mind is there to search for and attain and live in. That's what a seer, sage, a saint, a savior, even a savant in some cases are living in. See, this peace of mind. You need that first and foremost if you've visited this realm and you find yourself in the body. Most assuredly you need it here, more than here. Here the risk is pleasure, heaven-seeking senses getting attached to your ancestors and having a big party. See there, that's going to have a not so good ending when you're called back to earth. But beyond that, the 3 worlds, and getting into the 7 upper worlds, like I said to that man in the email the other day, peace times infinity, no, peace times 3 will do, because it's already here. See, and so this is what we mean as short commentary on Jesus is saying there. Many rooms in my Father's mansion, if you want to put it that way. They're all pieces, or should be places of rest, peace, and sojourn. Like the soul visiting, and like the Videha Mukta, coming into the body and giving it up without the least amount of trouble. Up and down the amber stairs of birth and death, as Sri Aurobindo said. Let's look, in the time remaining, at the next station. That's covering the Mahat pretty well, but of course all of this is a part of Mahat, and all of Mahat is a part of Brahman. So if we look at the next entry there, we see in Dharma Teaching Way that we have this yagya, and I mentioned that, I think at satsang was it, and maybe last week, or one of the 2 or both, that sacrifice is something that's been forgotten, and the selflessness that attends to it. But back in the day, that is in the time of the rishis, that the 5 kinds of sacrifice were enjoined. And the Gita has Sri Krishna's teachings of Bahu Yagya, the whole storehouse of sacrifices. He's got some 14 or 15 different kinds of sacrifices that you can do as a spiritual aspirant. But the basic teaching around the sacrifices can be given to us in this chart. The 5 kinds and 12 types of sacrifice. So yagya is the word. And Sri Krishna says, having known that even the ancient seekers after freedom performed action, therefore do you also perform action as they did in olden times. And know too that the world is bound by actions other than those performed for the sake of yagya. So perform action for yagya alone, free of attachment. There's the good news and the bad news. You see, there's the positive side of the teaching, and then the risk that the world is bound by actions other than done for sacrifice. So you see what you people out there is just living their karmas because of actions they've done, not in the spirit of sacrifice. It's a thief who takes and doesn't give back, is how Krishna puts that in the Gita. This world is not for them, then how any other? So it's back to what I was saying. Illumine your waking state. Then your dreams, heaven will be fine. If you can put these teachings together and effect a grand sacrifice, like the 5-fold sacrifice, let's look at that first. Then, of course, you have this illumined waking state that you're living in. And I must remark, as the more I have looked at the Hindu society over, even in present times, the more I've seen that they have a natural indwelling sense for sacrifice, for family, culture, and religion. That even in these hard times, called the Kali Yuga, have not really gone away from them. It's part of their character. I think even people who don't call it Dharma anymore have this character that's been created through many lifetimes of following sacrifice and yagya in the scriptures. Have to start talking first about the imperishable. So there's Akanda Satchidananda. There's how to live in the indestructible and eternal, infinite Brahman. If you have that in your ability and you practice, even if you're just practicing it day to day, then basically you'll have this Pancha Mahayagya come to you from the Vedas. Krishna talks about that as a great wheel. I like the Hindu wheel of things much better than I like the American Indian wheel or the Taoist wheel and other wheels, because you have this connection to all of this in them. In some wheels you just have nature. You have to follow the animals somehow, or you have some sort of a symbol. Well, that's fine. That happens in Kundalini Yoga too. But to connect everything from this earth's wheel to a larger wheel, to the grand wheel, then you've got the Vedic wheel of things. And it includes not just your ancestors, if you're to go so far. Some wheels just go in a medicine kind of way. Oh, let's heal. Some wheels, they'll go to your ancestors. India goes all the way to the Trinity and beyond. You want this kind of wheel of sacrifice, that you're giving sacrifice to who? The gods, the great teachers, rishis, mankind, his ancestors, her ancestors, and the bhutas, that is, animals, insects, trees, earth beings. Remember back here we had that in the form of Burloka. The bhutas is the same Sanskrit prefix. And then Bhuvarloka and so forth. So you're covering all of that same ground, only you're doing it with reverence. You can do it as a cosmology, you can look at it through philosophy, but if you're actually going to actuate it, and pay it forward or backwards as the case may be, or inwards is a better way, then you're bringing everything together inside of you, and this is going to help you realize that all of this is inside of you without boundaries. So under sacrifice to the gods, Krishna says, longing for success in action on earth, they worshipped the gods. For quickly is success born of action in this world of man. That's probably another thing besides the food that this world is good for, other than you can realize the Atman from the body, and you can't from heaven. The gods are fixed in their places for billions of years. They don't want out of heaven. They don't want out of dominion. I mean, would you leave your family? Who would leave their family? Only a soul that wanted liberation from form. That's the only soul that would leave their family. And they have to do it by making provisions for the family and then give it up, Sri Ramakrishna says. So you're talking about beings, gods and goddesses, who are looking over a huge family of souls that have been looking over them for thousands of lifetimes under the auspice of the Trinity, souls coming and going, path of the sun, path of the moon. And so you're not going to walk away from that. People can't even walk away from a dented tin pot, Holy Mother said, if they're impoverished on the street. Oh, this is my one possession. So they're grabbing on, they're clinging to life. It's selfish clinging. And how do you get rid of selfish clinging? By yagya. By yagya and seva. For the sake of others. So if the gods are there overseeing things, you realize them as powers inside yourself and you propitiate them. Same with your ancestors. We'll get to that. So you give everything back to them. You give them their due. If you go to India and you just sit at a homa sacrifice, you see, as we've done before, it can go on like half the day in heat, and they're also bending over the fire, you see, offering things into it. Put a little bit of that burnt offering on your forehead afterwards. They'll come around, you see, and you'll get the benefit of all the sacrifice. What's going on there for the Westerner? And they're looking on. The burnt offerings are turning into smoke, and the smoke is getting into the ether, and the ether is getting into the tanmatras, and the tanmatras are heaven enjoyed by the gods, presided over by the gods, and now they're feeling the burnt offerings, they're called, and they're satisfied. And walk away from the homa fire, or the puja, with the sacrifice done, everyone's happy. That's the wheel, at least a part of the wheel. And they're satisfying it this way since ancient times. They worship the gods in action on earth, and quickly is success born of that kind of worship. So things that take a long time to manifest are those things that are more worthwhile than things that come to you easily without sacrifice. That's another problem, or another point to make. Rishi Yaga, and these aren't coming in any necessary order. I would put Rishi Yaga beyond Deva Yaga myself, because, but it's not necessarily put here in an order. Rishi Yaga is sacrifice to the seers, or the rishis. Cherished by Yagya, the wise shall bestow the enjoyments you desire, but a thief is he who enjoys without returning anything. So you're reading the scriptures. Do you ever think of the seer who wrote the scripture? What he or she went through, how much trouble it was to take on a body to give you that scripture, how much they had to go to realize the wisdom that's in that scripture, and on and on. See? If you did, then you'd be treating that book differently. You wouldn't keep it in the kitchen with cookbooks or something. You see, or throw it anywhere on the couch. You'd say, this is a rishi's mind here. It's a living wisdom that's here. And so I keep it with special books on a special shelf, incense around it, near holy pictures. Take it out with reverence, read it, manana it, scrutinize it, realize it, put it back together, and salute the rishi who gave it to me. I mean, this charts with all these quotes on it, isn't that just rishi yoga I'm doing? They were all from different religions. Jesus, Buddha, Ramakrishna, Krishna. These are the sayings they've given us that apply nowadays. They're powerful. They're mind-transforming words. They're not just words with nothing in them. They have intelligent particles in them, coming from her. So, cherished by yoga, the wise bestow the enjoyments you desire. And of course, those enjoyments get more and more refined after you leave the level of heaven and you get into the higher heavens. You'll want to do yoga to Indra. Why? So he'll let you beyond the influence of the gods and goddesses and outside of heaven. They're guardians at the gate in Buddhism. You have to approach them with the mantra and say, let me through. What if you forget the mantra at the time of your death? You cannot pass unless you have the mantra. Oh, I had it back on earth, but gee, I can't remember it anymore. See? Quick, what do I do? Think of my guru. Oh yeah, I remember. Om Namah Shivaya. Oh, I'll pass then. The Trinity awaits. These are all the dynamics of the soul. Like you just said, different families or different religions of people who have gone into higher levels of consciousness, and they've figured out that they like that way of doing it, and others have joined them. And this is what America is. It might be another name for materialism and ignorance, but souls decided to get together here and have this kind of freedom that they like. It's not all bad, but it's not getting us very deep. It's a bubble in time that's, for some of us, is allowing us to study and remember the Dharma on devices. Get teachings and gurus and families together so that we can use our time wisely. So that's my a mixture of things, an admixture. Pitru Yaga, Pitru Yaga would be kind of level-wise next. Sacrifice to the ancestors. Krishna says, he sees who sees the Supreme Lord as remaining the same in all beings, the dying and the undying. I like that very much. It's that the dying and the undying, you see the same Atman in all of them. It bespeaks of people who are dying in ignorance and people who are living in enlightenment, basically, to me. You see the same Atman in all of them. See the same everywhere, Krishna says. Those who see the same everywhere and see the same in all beings and see all beings in me, they come to me. Across the board then, Nara Yagya, very important, maybe in a sense the most important today, when will man be friend to man, as Vivekananda said, is Nara Yagya, sacrifice to humankind. Having created mankind in the beginning, together with sacrifice, the Lord said, by this shall you propagate. It'll be the milch cow of your desires, so they sometimes say. Reminds me of a beautiful song. And then from there you see the fifth, Bhuta Yagya, sacrifice to subhumans. Behold my forms by hundreds and thousands, manifest and divine, and of multi-colors and shapes. In the Uddhava Gita he said, this great soul, that there are many-legged cities that he has. 1,000. What's a 1,000-legged city? Yeah, a millipede. And 10-legged, 6-legged, 4-legged, but my favorite of all cities, Purushas, indweller in the cities, is humankind, the 2-legged city. That's my favorite abiding place, he says. Very beautiful the way Sri Krishna describes. It's like, sort of includes everything but transcends everything simultaneously somehow, the way that soul puts things. It's uncanny, really, when you think about it. In the middle, there's that quote, that one who does not follow on earth this wheel, thus revolving, sinful of life, he lives in vain. So from birth to death and death to birth drags the soul, goes the soul. And as Vivekananda put it in his beautiful poem, but they conquer all who conquer self. So if you realize yourself, the whole thing is a dream, it's a projection. It's coming and going, but you're not coming and going with it. You're in one place observing it. The whole shooting match is going on in you like a tempest in a teacup. And the only thing you become aware of in the end is projection and withdrawal, the two hands of the mother. And then you look up her arms to see her face, and that's your doorway into non-duality. May she, the primal guide, my refuge be, Vivekananda said about her. Or, you could sing it this way. Vishayam kusumam parihricha sada charanya buru hamrita shanti sudam piba bringamano bhavaroga haram pranamami param jananim jagatam. Renounce my mind to be and sacrifice the sense flowers of this earth. Drink instead the nectar of Mother's lotus feet. Enjoy thus in peace and in mirth. Then in charm of delusion shalt thou cease to be. O great Mother of the worlds, be our salutations ever unto thee. That's the Divine Mother Devotee that wrote that verse and sang that verse in the last century. I put two other quotes there, and that kind of gives us a good rundown of the 5 sacrifices. Memorize them, start doing them. That is, you're probably already doing them, but realize you're doing them. Those are 2 different things. Give yourself a little benefit. You're not stupid. It's not that you don't know the Dharma. You know it. You're living in it. Now acknowledge it and enjoy thus in peace and in mirth. Because then in charm of delusion shall you cease to be. You won't be in delusion anymore is what that means. It doesn't mean you'll cease to be. That's the poetic version. In charm of delusion shall you cease to be. You'll transcend Maya. And then everything is a sacrifice to everything else all the time. And the outcome of that is death here. It's when you're born that you lose freedom. It's when you die that you gain it back. This life is all limitation. It's all about passion, desire, fetters, bondage, suffering, conditionings that limit your thinking. You don't see anything here even resembling the light of Brahman, except maybe the sun. And you know where you can go with that. In all sorts of directions. It's like sitting there, oh, take away the sun. It's veiling your true light. Who thinks like that? So it's when you pass free of conditionings, of course, that you get all these freedoms back, because your consciousness, and the consciousness all of a sudden bottled itself up and corked the top. You see, it's like they say when the fetus develops, the last thing to close is the sagittal sutra. It's like, just before it came out, consciousness got into it, it sealed itself in there. You see. It's a Tibetan Buddhist kind of teaching. Because if you're a conscious being, you don't get into the body while it's being formed. In the fetus, that's hell. There are poems and songs about that. How you suffered knitting bones and flesh and nerves together for 8 months. It's hell, they say. If you're conscious of being born in a body, think yourself to be that. But you can stand back and watch that process happen. Get in just before the baby comes out. You're still crying for a little while. It's natural. Watch the freedoms go away and watch the limitations come upon you. And now it's a 12-year race, see? Or in Shankar's case, an 8-year race. How quickly can I recover from thinking myself to be born in Maya in a body? I'll outstrip everyone else, you see. The rest are all playing Monopoly, trying to beat all the rest, see, as the song sings. But I'm trying to beat Maya. I'm going to do it in 8 years. Christ will do it in 14. See. Swamiji, about the same. See. Up and out of Maya, as quick as I can. I was never born. Namar Chorna Shankar. So, other quotes Krishna says on this level, from food beings become, from rain food is produced, from sacrifice rain proceeds. Yaga is born of karma. So back to the actions on earth at the top, quote at the top there. For the sake of yaga, they are coming here and performing good karmas, or even colorless karmas. It's a good thing to understand. Plus he says from the Ishvara level, having known me as the Lord of all sacrifices, as the ruler of all the worlds, as the friend of all beings, you will attain peace. There's a nice Triputi for you. Lord of all sacrifices, ruler of all worlds, and friend of all beings. Om Indram Mitram Mataratu Jivaha Sa Suparna Garutman Ekam Sat Vifar Bahuda Vadantim Yaman Matarish Vanamahu. As the Upanisads say. That one indivisible being is the friend of all souls, is the fire of yoga, is the waters of life, is the devourer of death, is the carrier of consciousness, and is the one who shines forth all the light. That was the ancient scripture. That's the most ancient scripture we know of, the Rig Veda. They were thinking that way back then, coming up with sayings like that about God and himself, and about the world too. That's why I've been saying lately, have a secret friend. Talk to him or her. Go around. I didn't finish that story last week or on Satsang where Holy Mother had 4 goddesses around her when she was a little girl. In the village of Jairamati, walking around, she finally said to her mother, who are those 4 women who are always following me down to the bathing ghat and walking in the streets? Who are those 4? And her mother was like speechless. And evidently they stopped accompanying her later on when she got older. So have a secret companion, an internal companion inside of you. It can be yourself if you're so egotistic. So. But it could be the Lord of all beings, the friend of all beings, the Lord of all sacrifices, and the ruler of all the worlds. I call it the Mahat if you want. But in most cosmologies of India, the Mahat falls under the jurisdiction of Ishvara, or the Trinity. Just quickly to finish this chart, look at all the sacrifices Krishna brings out in that chapter on yogis. Deva yagya, you can offer, you offer that sacrifice to the gods. This actually duplicating up here. Shrotra yagya, offering the senses. Everything I have through the senses, I give back to you, O Lord. All the food I eat, everything I hear, everything I see. Just make sure that you always acknowledge the Lord in that as an offering. Indriya karmani yagya, offering the actions of the senses, the very actions himself. You learn that well in puja, that you should be very mindful when you're offering flowers, incense, lighting the candle, taking Ganges water, putting a lay around. Om idam malyam sarvadeva devi swardabhaya. The malyam, the mala that you're putting around, the picture, the image of the divine, and worshipping it. That's an action you're doing. Offer that. Drovya yagya, offer your wealth, your materials, everything you have. Houses, cars, everything. Bottles of gin, whiskey. The Hawaiians do that here to stop Pele from flowing. Oh, they're coming right at us, you see. If I just offer her a little bottle of gin, I think it is, she'll stop, you see. So I offer that all to you. Or in the case of Sri Ramakrishna, give up alcohol drinking and just take me as your highest source. Okay, I think I can do that. And then the desire to drink goes away in the next few days. So offer it all, heartfelt, in the spirit of yagya. Probably you wouldn't say, look at me, I'm offering. Aren't I good? See? It's not the spirit of yaga we're talking about. You're doing it selflessly, not selfishly. So part of selfishness is to be acknowledged for giving. What's that called in yoga? In a negative way. As a selfish grasping. It's called not giving gifts. Aparigraha. Yeah, that's actually the hidden meaning behind that. One of the hidden meanings behind that. So you don't give gifts to be acknowledged for it. Sounds like Christmas, doesn't it? What did you give me? Let's see. Oh, I don't like that. Take it back to the store. So you get the money back for it. The person finds out that you didn't like their gift and don't forgive each other for years. Happened in my family. They wouldn't talk to each other, these two people, over a silly thing like that, for the rest of their lives. And you want to join the ancestors? See more of that nonsense going on? Yoga yagya is offering yogic practice. That's a great one. You see, I do my practices here. Practices are the 4 yogas, basically. I mean, don't offer God your asana necessarily. What does he care about what pretzel shape you're twisting the body in? If that's all you can manage, then you're not much of a yogi. Offer everything, your food, your energy from food, and your study of the scriptures. That's actually coming up. The wisdom you get, and so forth. Make it all an offering into the self. Pranayama yagya. Pranayama maya. Offering regulation of the breath. So breathe consciously. What more to say? Ishvara yagya. Offer all as sacrifice to the Lord. Probably that's covering all of this, you see. If you can manage that, you've done it all. Shabda yagya, offering hearing and sense objects. Because sounds and music, that was what a young man wrote me today about hearing how to get over the attachment to hearing things and enjoying things that you're hearing, so you would need to make an offering of that. Pranayagya is offering your very life force. I offer everything, body, mind, senses, objects, all at the feet of the fearless feet of the Mother of the Universe. You'd offer even your very life force. Tapoyagya, offering austerities. Svadhyaya yoga, offering your studies. And Nityahara yagya, offering food and its energy. In the end, he says, various yagyas such as these are spread out in the storehouse of the Vedas. Know them all to be born of karma, and thus knowing, you shall be free. So right there, the level of yagya. With the time remaining, let's move to this, so that we finish up the topic of yagya very well. And a beautiful image there of the goddess offering a garland, and Vishnu coming in on Garuda, the carrier of consciousness we just talked about, to accept that offering. So this teaching, again, from Sri Krishna in the Gita, this is why you can start out with all the great things we heard today about Advaita, right? And cogitate on that for a while. Then you come down to Ishvara, as we're doing. Mahat, Ishvara, you start to hear about things like sacrifice and selflessness. And because people there at that level, the level of the gods and the ancestors and so forth, this is what they have to sort through. They have to filter so that they won't get attached to heaven or to their angelic bodies. They always keep a higher, keep awareness of higher consciousness in them. So they need to hear the teachings constantly. Sri Krishna says, the imperishable is Brahman. This is an answer to a question Arjuna asks. Its dwelling in the individual bodies is termed Adhyatma. Adibhuta pertains to perishable nature. And the Purusha is the Adidaivata. Adidaivata means the original divinity. And I, Ishvara, am the sole sacrificer, therefore I'm called Adiyagya. So Arjuna, in that day and age, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, even though he's not real well versed in the Dharma yet, that's what I mean about India. He's heard these terms. What is Adiyagya? What is Adibhuta? What is Adidaiva? And who is sacrificer here in this form? Who's really the sacrificer? So Krishna comes forth with that jewel. A complex question, an immediate answer with all the ramifications to contemplate. Let's look at those a little carefully. Let's look at number 1 first, which is down near the bottom. Adhyatma is Brahman's presence in everything. That's throughout. So that diagram means that's everywhere, infusing everything, as we like to say, like sweetness in sugarcane juice. Then you see number 2 goes to, and this is a quick study chart, Adidaivata, the soul itself. Number 3 goes to Adibhuta, nature. Remember Bhur, Bhuta, all those words in Sanskrit. That pretty much refers to the Bhutas, objects, nature, and the beings that are bodies moving amongst the objects, still unconscious of who they are. So they might as well be objects too. Right? That's where we're objectifying things, right? Even other people. So we might as well just be one of the Bhutas. And number 4 there is Krishna himself, in this case Vishnu, his sacrifice, Adiyaga. He comes and accepts everything from the sincere offering at heart. So when you look at that, these other little teachings that I've put with these, then you look at the 4 transmigrations. Would be first Bhutas, physical beings, which we just talked about, Pitrus, ancestors, Devas, gods and goddesses, and Ishvara, the supreme form. So transformations means these are consciousness taking on bodies with apparent motion and action and karma and so forth. So you have to keep that karma clean. And you have to, if you're the supreme sacrificer, like jumping the game ahead a little bit here, then you've got Ishvara taking all that on. There's a beautiful song, I won't sing it, but there's a beautiful song in which the verse, English verse translation goes that Mother Kali is the goddess of perfect blackness is standing there. Streaks of crimson red are flowing down her beautiful black form. So wow, what a vision and what a shocking thing to contemplate. But why? Why is she suffering? Why are streams of red rolling down her form like, I think it's crimson flowers on black waters. It's the way they describe that. She's the sacrificer. All the errors committed by people doing wrong actions are showing up on her body. It's like much grander than just a crucifixion kind of thing with one person. And its philosophical ramifications. Anyway, you're talking about a soul that takes on the sacrifice of all beings and shows it on their form. And you're not going to revere and love this being we call Ishvara, or Ishvari in that case. So you might want to attend it with the 3 ways of clear suffering. Clear suffering. The 3 ways of clear seeing. Perceiving reality in the dying and the undying. We had that earlier. Perceiving the supreme goal. Perceiving all action done by nature while the soul remains actionless. Beautiful Triputi buried in the Gita to bring out, and well, this is the 3 ways of clear seeing. How you open your third eye and know the truth, and the truth sets you free. There's your directions. You want to see the same in everything, dying and undying, because both of those are a duality that isn't really happening to the soul. It's happening to individuals, minds, in their minds. It doesn't even happen. It doesn't even change them in their minds. It's just happening. Rising and falling phenomena, as the Buddhists say. Bodies are a part of the rising and falling. Or perceive the supreme goal, and perceive the supreme goal. Keep the eyes on the prize, as they say. That's really why I'm here. If I lose track of that, Sri Ramakrishna says, it's like the kid swinging around the pole at recess. If he holds on to that pole, he'll have a good time. And all the motion and everything is nothing. Maybe get a little dizzy at the end, that's called bliss. But if he lets go of the pole accidentally, he's distracted or gets going too fast for himself. He falls and skins his knee, runs home to mother, and she fixes him. So he says that's his simple way of putting by watching people, watching children that play in Kamarpukur, where he grew up, and probably in Calcutta too. Then that's a way of saying they lost track of the goal when you're spinning around. That's the risk. And also, my favorite of these actually is perceiving all action done, perceiving that all action done happens in nature, not in the soul. I think that's the clearest way, and I've heard in the teachings, the non-dual teachings of describing what otherwise you'd be calling a dream, or a projection, or lila, or illusion, or suffering. It's basically, that's the best way to say it. All action is really taking place in nature, not in you. So you'd have to go back to what I was saying there. Om mano bujaham kara chittani naham, nacha shrota jiuve, nacha grana netri. I'm not the buddhi, I'm not the intellect, I'm not the thoughts of the mind, I'm not the gyanendriyas, I'm not the mahabhutas. That's nacha vyoma bhumir, nate jona vayu. I'm not the tanmatras, vibhutvacha sarvatra sarvendriyanam. None of that am I. I'm Shiva, Shiva, Shiva. So in that way, if I know that and that's the case, then what happens? to all that action. It's all in nature, as well as the body that does it, and karma, and so forth. So what are you going to want to do with the body and its actions? To ensure that you never let go of that pole. You're going to want to make these offerings all the time. You're going to want to be a part of your life or all of your life. There shouldn't be one act, one movement, one thought, one morsel of food in your mouth that isn't done for the sake of yagya. For wretched are the result seekers, he says. Wretched are the result seekers. They're looking for pleasures, they're looking for return, and they never find the secrets of Dharma. Imagine that. Never entertain them in their mind because they've never been able to find them because it's blocked by all these conventional colorations or conditionings. It's a thief who enjoys here and doesn't give back. This world is not for them. How can the next world be for them? So we go back to see how beings are born short of heaven and just come back on the wheel of samskara without even ever having any commerce with their ancestors. There are souls like that. There are even evil souls who, remember, there's 7 lower worlds. We're just talking about the 7 upper worlds in the cosmology. There are 7 hells, patalas. Buddhism's famous for describing the patalas. In the time remaining, which I guess is about up, we can finish this chart though. The 5 offerings to the Lord, if you want to put it a fine point on it. Your acts, what you consume, what you sacrifice, the gifts you give, and the austerities you do. If you want to put it into 5 instead of 12, it crystallizes it down to what you can use as a sadhana for, or an austerity for keeping yourself conscious, mindful, focused. And finally, the 5 criterion for divine union is given along in this conjunction. This is all the 2 charts on sacrifice or yagya, and then we're done with that and we can move on to another topic next week. But basically these 5 criterion are: do your divine works, have divine visions, divine devotion, divine detachment, and divine love. Everything's divine, daiva, you see. Not demoniacal, animalistic, pasu, but daiva. And divine union is a result of all those 5. So here's some teachings of the Dharma as we have reached the end of our time that have taken us from non-duality to Ishvara and Mahat onto sacrifice. What is it next week we will take up at the level of cosmic and broaching collective? We'll look at the secret of creation, Shrishti Rahasya. That is projection, we like to say the word. And samsara, oddly enough. I remember when I went through my study of the 108 Upanishads, this got the most mention. These are the subjects that got the most mention. There are plenty of other subjects that get broached. But I kept track and tally. Oh, there's, they were racing each other. Oh, that has 5 now. Oh, that has 8. It's way out in front. You see. Non-duality was pretty much out in front because the Upanishads are basically non-dual, but there are a lot of qualified teachings and dualistic teachings in the Upanishads too, and that's what makes them so rich. So here we will see you next week for a continuation of Brahman in the Upanishads. It strikes me that we may do another 3-class series on this, just to continue afterwards, if we want to get to the bottom of this. Let's get to the bottom of this, but without forgetting the top. Om Bhadram Karnebihi Srinayama Devaha Bhadram Pasyena Akshabirya Jatraha Sthirair Angayish Tushvam Sastanavir Vashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swastina Indra Vidashavaha Swastina Pusha Vishvadevaha Swastina Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspati Dadatu Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual. May we hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshipping and sacrificing to the gods and goddesses, with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.